Something just changed. Now, the macro conditions, which XRP and all cryptocurrencies are subject to, haven't changed, but lower time frame forces have certainly beat up on XRP price over the past 3 days. And sentiment is certainly lower within the past 3 days. But we're also holding above support at $2. And don't forget, just a little over 3 weeks ago, price had dropped to as low as $1.80. And at that point, I mean, it was kind of funny to see because there were irrational XRP haters, people that suffer from the affliction known as XRP derangement syndrome. There are a few of them that as soon as XRP got down to about $1.80, these XRP chart guys who don't normally talk about XRP, especially not since the end of 2024 when XRP was an outperformer, they started charting XRP again. Once you know it, XRP price went down and they got a little bold again, calling for XRP to drop to 80 cents. And I highlighted a few examples where I could find them. And I was like, here they are. Not afraid to share the negative sounding stuff, but I highlight when they have a history of irrationally hating XRP. And it's just kind of funny to see that. And so at least we're a little bit higher than that. And so I will tell you this. I'll share with you perspective from 9 different XRP chart analysts in this video. You guys can decide what you think makes the most sense. I'm still very optimistic that the best is yet ahead for all of us. And there are lots of very sane, very, very, very rational reasons to believe that. Bitcoin is $90,974. So market's down, excuse me, a little bit. I'm going to take a sip of water here. Sorry, folks. Most of you know I've been getting over a cold, and I actually feel pretty close back to normal, but this cough is just lingering. And I do all my videos in one take. That's that, because I just wanted to be raw. That's what I've always wanted to be on this channel. I want it to be like, I know it's kind of a stream of consciousness, and I have some general ideas of what I want to talk about, but it is a stream of consciousness because I always wanted this channel to just be basically the way that I'd talk if I were hanging out with you listening to this on a patio drinking a beer, like just chit-chatting about stuff. I've always wanted to be like that, so there's no production quality, no impressive intro music or 3D graphic designs or AI slop to throw in here. It's just a dude behind a mic, and that's how I've always wanted it to be. Just in a raw conversation. And that way, even if I say something stupid, it's in. Either I publish the whole thing as it is, or I just don't publish it because I don't edit these videos. It's just one take. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to go on that little side tangent as I took a sip of water because sometimes I get into these coughing fits. So take a look at this post. There's some stuff that happened today, folks. Here's a post from Ryan Dietrich. He's the chief market strategist at Carson Group. And he's got this little chart here titled, "The higher first 5 days in 2026 is a good sign." And he wrote, "The S&P 500 is up more than 1% after the first 5 days in 2026. Historically, when this happens, the full year is positive more than 87% of the time and up nearly 16% on average. We might sound like a broken record, but this bull market is likely far from over." And so look, I know that no metric is the end all be all, but history does tend to rhyme with itself. And sometimes it doesn't, or sometimes it's a little bit different. And sometimes the improbable happens. Of course, I acknowledge that. But if you were to just bet on history kind of roughly rhyming with itself without any additional context, you'd be right the vast majority of the time. When it comes to market activity, you would be right the vast majority of the time on big picture questions, basically. And so the fact that we've seen this, hey, if history tends to rhyme with itself, and it does, that's good omen. You know what else just happened in traditional finance? Oh, the Russell 2000. The Russell 2000 hit a new all-time high today, an intraday high, and then we closed at a new all-time high. The actual close for the day was at 2,603. We've never been above 2,600 before. So love to see that. And of course, the Russell 2000, that's a small cap stock index. And when that goes, that shows that people have a certain appetite for greater risk because the smaller caps are considered to be more risky investments than larger cap stocks, like a Google or Apple, name your company. And so when that happens, it follows that historically is alt season. So it doesn't mean it's imminently going to happen. But if we've seen signs of life in the Russell 2000, that's undeniably a good thing. And the fact that we're seeing this and we're in an extended cycle thanks to debt being rolled at a later pace thanks to maturity of debts from previous cycle. It's extended to 4.5 or 5.4 years according to Rob Powell's calculations. and that's because, of course, the interest rate on loans ended up being 0% because of the pandemic. So people wanted to take on longer terms. Well, that's why we're seeing a roll into the debt take a longer time. And that's why we're waiting to see the greatest bulk of liquidity that's going to come. Because when the debt refinancing comes, that's when you see the liquidity rush. Like that's when you see it. And so that's why we're waiting on it to unfold this year. And so the fact that we've seen the Russell 2000, hit multiple new all-time highs, even in recent months, but not go on a full-blown rampage, that makes sense, actually. It does make sense. Normally, when you go further out the risk curve, it's when you get closer to the point where you'd expect that type of liquidity increase. We're still waiting for it. All of this makes sense, but I'm showing you this because it's a sign of life. That's the reason that I'm highlighting this right here. Then there's also this post from Cryptos R Us, and this is fascinating because I'm sure you guys are well aware that gold and silver did pretty damn well in 2025, right? Well, it's also true historically that Bitcoin follows. But there's some additional insight here in this conversation between Matt Hogan, that's the guy on the left, and Nate Karachi, that's the guy on the right. And so here's what the post says. Gold did this for 3 years. Bitcoin is next. Okay, now, even if you don't care about Bitcoin, and I actually don't that much, I admit it's one of my largest holdings, but I admit I still don't care that much because there's only so much upside left from here. I mean, are we even going to get a twofold increase before the cycle ends? Maybe, I don't know. But the real opportunity for life-changing wealth, it's in altcoins and other top coins like XRP, for example. I firmly believe that. So if Bitcoin's next, alt season is next. Anyway, they wrote here, Bitwise CIO Matt Hogan broke this down with Nate Karachi, and the analogy matters. Central banks bought gold aggressively for 3 straight years. Price went nowhere at first because existing holders kept selling into demand. Then sellers ran out and gold went vertical. That's the same dynamic playing out in Bitcoin today. ETFs aren't underperforming. They're absorbing supply from legacy holders. Institutions are buying more than new issuance, but price hasn't reacted yet. Supply is still being handed over. That supply isn't infinite. Gold already ran this script. Bitcoin is just earlier in the cycle. Okay, and so a couple things. Like I said, from a historical perspective, Bitcoin lags behind gold anyway. That just is the case. I mean, well, think about it. I mean, it logically makes sense. Gold's perceived as a risk-off asset when a hedge against tumultuous times. But then when things flip and you get into a risk-on environment, that's where you see stocks run. That's where you see Bitcoin run. That's where you then see ultimately, as you go further out the risk curve, as a tolerance for risk increases, that's when you see alt season. And that's when XRP goes also. But what I found interesting was some additional specifics behind what led up to this point. And it is true that in recent years, central banks have been buying the ever-loving hell out of gold. And that's a major, major, major factor in why we've seen this. But don't think that just because this has happened, don't think there's not going to be some sort of rotation into cryptocurrencies. The only world in which everything we're seeing makes sense, so far as I can tell, is if this is an elongated cycle. If we're actually in a true bear market now, and it's going to look like previous bear markets, nothing makes sense anymore for so many reasons. Here's a post from chart analyst Quinton. He said, sub 50% Bitcoin dominance by July. Bookmark this. And, well, people did. 69 bookmarks right now. That's kind of bold. I absolutely, of course, do buy into the idea that, yes, Bitcoin dominance will plummet even if price goes up as dominance goes down. And that's going to be great because that will signal the start of alt season. Is it going to happen by July, though? That I have no idea. I mean, it could be later in the year. I mean, even Rob Paul said that, you might not see the cycle peak until like late 2026. So we'll see here. But speculating about this happening in July isn't crazy. It definitely is not. You could, I admit, you could absolutely see some fireworks by then. But if he's right, then by the time summer rolls around, that's when everything's going to rip, and that's going to be the final parabolic run for this market cycle to cap things off. So I hope he's right. I do. I would love for that to be the case so we can just finally wrap this up. I'm not feeling impatient, but I know what I would prefer, and that's to finally sell my crypto. That's the thing I've been trying to do for the better part of a decade now, but yeah, I have to be enticed. Lower prices do not entice me. That's the wrong direction. That's the opposite of where the market should go if the market wants me to sell. Must go higher. Here's a post from the great Matsby from just 3 days ago, January 5th. And this is a Bitcoin here. He says, all jokes aside, $94,357 is mandatory zone to break above for weekly candle closes. Don't celebrate too soon at this important resistance zone to break for continuation higher. Okay, so he was urging caution. And so mind you, again, 3 days ago, XRP that day got up to $2.41. Bitcoin, it got up to close to 94,000, I think. So market moves in tandem. Just don't forget, like Bitcoin was going up too, okay? That was a resistance level for Bitcoin on the Bitcoin chart and on the XRP chart, where XRP got anyway. And we have seen a pullback since then, which is normal stuff. And the great Matsby was talking about this, and I did highlight that on my channel. And so he reposted that just this morning, and he said, have I convinced you yet to stop being bullish at major resistance levels? Which I think is a fair enough point. Now, he is a bull if you're talking about on a higher time frame. In the short term, he was just urging caution, but he does not think this cycle's over. And at this point, if you don't think the cycle's over, we're all in the same camp. The cycle, it is longer than ever before. That is what that means if you are not a bear right now. And that's just the matter of fact statement. And here's another post from the great Matsby, because 3 days ago, somebody wrote, as far as Matt's chart was actually on the screen here, sorry, that trend line, the dark green, is irrelevant. This line right here. Now, the great Matsby here is using a form of chart analysis called GANN, G-A-N-N, and I think he's the only analyst I follow that uses it. Honestly, I'm not particularly familiar with the parameters of it or how or why it works. I've seen charts from him on this. It is absolutely a legit form of chart analysis. I just can't speak to the specifics, but that's where that line came from, is GAN analysis. I do know that. And so this guy said that trend line is relevant. The great Matsby said no. And so he reposted that this morning. He said, looks like this angle wasn't irrelevant after all. Trust the market symmetry, which is why I issued caution at $2.34. And so it is true, can't deny this. It's been respecting that line, certainly. And the caution that he put out there, totally fair. And multiple analysts that I highlighted were warning, hey, okay, yeah, we could go higher from here, but just hold on. You could run into a bit of resistance here. And I highlighted in recent days tons of analysts with that exact warning. And so this isn't scary, bad, weird. Nothing's broken. The fact that we've had a pullback, markets don't go up perfectly in a straight line, and we're waiting for certain other things to happen. We need to see Bitcoin rampage higher. We need a proper environment for this. And it does look like a lot of things are really teed up. We're just not quite there yet. This one's going to be fun, though, when it happens. This is an XRP BTC chart, and oh my God, I have been waiting for this for almost a freaking decade. I've been waiting a long time. I know so many of you guys have been too. Take a look at this. Launchpad above. Only one thing stands in XRP's way. XRP against Bitcoin broke out of its falling wedge, but rejected 0.00002550. Once it breaks, it will explode, but first it needs to reverse here. Patience always pays. Well, yeah, patience definitely always pays. And so you can see what he's talking about here. Obviously, the formation that he's highlighting here, he said falling wedge, noting that XRP price against Bitcoin did break out of it. It came back down. So broke through that resistance at this moment in time. It's support anyway. But I wanted to highlight this because, and I talked about this, I think within the last couple of days, I mentioned it briefly. It's worth highlighting here again. And I do believe this is going to happen. But on this pair, XRP BTC, although we had an all-time high against the dollar multiple times last year, we have not had a new all-time high price for XRP priced against Bitcoin since 2017 in the first half of the year. It was like April or May, I think. That's how long it's been. We're coming up on 9 years since XRP had a new all-time high against Bitcoin. Now, what he's highlighting here is this is progress, and the launch pad is above, and it's going to hit that, and this mofo is going to go. And I do buy into that narrative at some point. The idea, I don't pretend to know when, but at some point in the future it's going to, because the idea that XRP hit an all-time high against Bitcoin in 2017, and that was it forever, and it would never happen again, that idea is so freaking absurd to me, I cannot take it seriously. especially not now that XRP is almost 14 years old. This summer will be 14 years old, and fundamentals have never been stronger, and it's been price suppressed because of the United States government for years, but now we have regulatory clarity. We're on a level playing field here, and now it's just not going to run against it ever again. Not even for a brief moment in time will XRP be priced past the all-time high that we saw in 2017 against Bitcoin. I just don't buy that. Now, the cool thing is, based on what Bitcoin's worth right now, even if we just matched the previous all-time high on the XRP BTC chart, you're already talking about double-digit price action for XRP if you're talking about the dollar. You're looking at over $10. I didn't run the exact math, but yeah, you're looking at over $10 if this happens. So way, way, way higher. So to me, in general, because I'm like the rest of you, like I believe we found a winner here with XRP. And fine, if I'm wrong, it goes to zero, I lose everything. Got it. But to me, it just seems very obvious that XRP is an early winner of the crypto space, and I'm just going to play the waiting game because I can't control this anyway. I'm totally at peace with that. But this is coming, so we're waiting for this, and we're waiting for face-melting price action for XRP, and we haven't seen that since the beginning of 2018. So we've been waiting for that for 8 years. So we got part of what we wanted. We did get the all-time high. We got multiple of those. A couple other things we're waiting for here. I think it's coming. Here's a post from JD. Chart analyst, he said, XRP. If XRP BTC can break out above the 9-year trend line, so close, I expect biblical rise to price discovery levels. He says dumb money will get emotionally excited right before the historical rug pull crash. Mark my words, majority will be exit liquidity. Yeah, well, that's always a look when anything runs, whether it's a stock or a crypto or whatever. There's always people that buy at the top and they're left holding the bag. Of course, that always happens. So that will be true with XRP also. But the opportunity is certainly here. The idea that this is going to be a tremendous rise, yeah. But as soon as everything it perfectly lines up, and it does seem like we're getting teed up here. I do think you're going to see a tremendous run here. And he can see this too. And yes, sometimes charts actually take this long to play out. It's been almost 9 years. And you know what? Sometimes it takes decades, multiple decades for chart formations to play out. Welcome to life. And yes, I think it's a very high probability that this stuff would have played out last market cycle if not for the SEC, because XRP is the only coin last market cycle that didn't hit a new all-time high. Coincidence? I don't think so. But we can't control that, and so here we are. You only get a chance roughly every several years at this point. So we get it now. I think it's coming. Here's a post from chart analyst CW. Says, the XRP rally is only just beginning. The sub-indicators show that it is bottoming out of oversold states and will soon enter neutral states. And so he's targeting still. He's been consistent about this. And he posted this morning, okay? The price pullback happened, and he's still bullish. Note that, please. Phase 4, where he thinks is going to peak $21.50 per XRP. That's what he thinks. So we'll see. I don't make price predictions. I admit I don't know where XRP price is going. I'm just in the camp with the rest of you in believing that, yeah, even though I don't know where it's going to go, much higher than this. I think it's undervalued currently. I think the rest of the world's going to figure this out. A lot of people the hard way. Here's another one from CW. Says the next target for XRP is $2.78, which is the Fibonacci 1.618 level. And he posted that this morning, 11:51 a.m. Central Time. So despite the pullback, he's still thinking in the short term there's at least a chance, even in the short term, you're going to be seeing some more explosive price action. So I don't know who's right, because there are some analysts think it's more probable we're going to see a bit more of a pullback. Some think that we're just a little bit of a correction here, and then we're going to move up in the short term. I'm not taking a bet on that. We're going to find out together. Either's plausible, but neither's the end of the world. And that's a key takeaway. Even if we go down first, these analysts that are saying, hey, there's a more likely chance we go down, none of them are saying that would mean we're entering a bear market. Not all the ones that I follow. Here's a post from Crypto Insight UK. XRP low time frame areas of interest. And lots of analysts are talking about these levels. The first one is as low as about $2. Tons of analysts are talking about that as a key level because that was resistance until a few days ago. It's now support. So let's hope it stays as support. Then you have this lower level that looks like it's between roughly roughly $1.80 to $1.90. I'm just rounding there, but that's about it. So it would be kind of, some people are going to be so sad if we get there. If we get down to like $1.80, that's where we were weeks ago when we had our local bottom. So I hope that doesn't happen. But it's not going to change anything, even if we actually did. And I'll tell you this, if we get down there, I find the odds of us getting down there very low unless Bitcoin and the rest of the market's going to take a tumble too. And that's why when I see these predictions from these guys that hate XRP but have massive followings and they're charting XRP to like 80 cents, why aren't they charting Bitcoin to like, I don't know, something really low, like $, negative $80? I don't fucking know. Why aren't they charting something lower though? Pick a number. I don't care if they're going to say, 80,000 or 75,000 or 70,000. I don't care. In what world does it make sense where XRP is just going to, in a vacuum, fall by itself to that degree and the rest of the market's just fine? Now, if they were charting everything going down dramatically, I could take them more seriously. But when you're charting XRP to 80 cents, but you don't think the rest of the market's going to go down, maybe you think the rest of the market's even going to be neutral or go up, I cannot take you seriously. I'll highlight you on my channel for the lulls, but no. Here's a post from Chart Nerd. It says XRP above its reaccumulation support is bullish, period. And he's highlighting this yellow line here. It's not labeled, but I know he's been talking about $2. That's probably about what this level is. He's talked about that so much recently. So many analysts have talked about that $2 level now being support rather than resistance. And then he also shared this morning. He wrote, XRP is in wedge compression whilst tapping its lower time frame 4-hour 0.5 fib support zone. All eyes on 50 to 61% of this drawback, marking a local low. And so here you can see he is talking about perhaps as low as $2.09 or $2.02. So, again, not crazy talking. Like, that would be normal. I know nobody wants to see XRP go lower unless you hate it. It could, though. I just wanted to highlight, you don't have to get hit in your fields every time this happens. Like, life goes on. It's very normal. Nothing, XRP, Bitcoin, ETH, pick your coin, nothing goes up perfectly in a straight line. That's okay. Here's a post from Dusty BC Crypto, XRP USD on the 8-hour chart. It says, as we have said, price has pulled back to the 200 EMA to retest. Now it is essential to see a continuation of the bulls kick in to firmly deny any bearish continuation. If we make that new high, as we marked on the chart, that would be a massive bullish confirmation. Now is the time for continuation. So, fair bit of reasonable optimism so far as I'm concerned. We'll see what happens here. But just because we had a pullback the last few days, it doesn't mean it has to go lower than we've already seen. I'm not making a prediction, but look, what matters more is what happens on the higher time frame, big picture. And on that point, I could not possibly be more bullish. Here's a post from Steph is Crypto. He says, XRP is doing something very interesting here. After a long corrective phase, XRP has completed a clean wave 4 structure, forming a falling wedge, and is now breaking out. Now compare it to gold. And I wanted to share this because, talked about gold a little bit earlier. It says gold went through the same process first. A similar corrective structure, a decisive breakout, and then a powerful expansion phase over the past few months. Gold led the move, as it often does during macro shifts and liquidity transitions. What stands out is how closely XRP is tracking that same path, just delayed in time. Hard assets tend to move first. Higher beta assets follow. Gold already made its move. XRP is just starting to respond. Well, that would be within historical norms, so I certainly hope that's indeed the case, but it is true. Crypto follows what precious metals do anyway. So if XRP is part of that, I'm down. Why wouldn't I be? That makes logical sense. It's based on historic precedent. Here's a post from Coins Kid. This is not somebody I regularly follow. I don't even follow him on X, but I do know that this individual is popular within the XRP community. And so, he's got a pretty big following, right? 151,900 followers. And this is the most bearish post I could find about XRP in the short term from somebody who likes XRP. So I wanted to share it, just so you've got it. He says, I like this count more than others for XRP. If this count holds true, we find the bottom and we ride a macro third wave up. It will be glorious. And so the thing that's negative here in the short term is if this plays out as he's drawn it, that means you're going to have XRP bottom out around $1.05. Now, folks, I'm not seeing anyone else chart that low except for people who do hate XRP irrationally. And he does not. I know he does not. He is not a troll. He likes XRP. And so I just wanted to highlight this because I love highlighting diverse perspectives here. So I'm not sold on this, but if he's right, all the credit in the world. Now, if that happens, let me say again, I don't see a world where that happens unless Bitcoin and everything else is tanking too. And then, okay, fine. In which case it's not an XRP problem. It means there was a black swan event or who knows what happened, right? But you can see to the upside, he's charting looks like closer to maybe $25 or so to peak this cycle. So he's still bullish on XRP even if there's a pullback here. So take it for what it's worth. Just the messenger here. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea.